So a brief overview of why there was a war. So Europe gets to the New World and screws with a bunch of natives and their land. And when England finally got done screwing with all the people's land, they had a couple good years, everything was going fine. And then Britain got greedy and angry because they spent a bunch of money on a war with France and they couldn't pay it back themselves. Naturally, they turned to their colonies and started taxing them using taxes like the Stamp Act, Sugar Act, Proclamation Act, and to avoid more war in some cases, the Intolerable Acts. Of course, we get mad. We hurt some innocents. They get mad, they hurt some innocents. And eventually we try to fix our problems and they refuse our treaty. So we start to gather guns, ammo, and boycott a bunch of British goods, and all of this leads to the Battle of Lexington and Concord in 1775. So loyalists are people who support Britain, tell Britain we're stocking up on ammo and guns, and naturally the British try to stop us. So the British start marching from Boston to Concord in order to take all of our weapons and ammo. This is when the famous Paul Revere and co. ride up on horses saying, "The British are coming! The British are coming!" Luckily, we have enough time to get all our guns and ammo out, and the news of the British coming wakes up our Minutemen, aka the militia that we have, who are exactly what they called, men ready in a minute. So Britain gets to Concord only to realize we got our stash out, and feeling defeated with low morale, they start marching out of the city. This is where the Minutemen come in. So we take advantage of the British not expecting us to open fire. So the British are taken by surprise and unable to get in formation or properly fight back. So they decide to retreat, but alas, it's too late. In the end, the fully trained, experienced British Army lose to a bunch of inexperienced colonists with guns. So the British lose a total of around 300 men, and the Minutemen lose around a total of 90 people. This is obviously a huge loss to the British and a major victory to the Patriots that sets off the Revolutionary War. Sullivan's Land Battle of 1776. Sullivan Island was Britain's first attempt to take over the South. The island was an important port city at the time along with Charleston. The British leader, Henry Clinton, decided that he wanted to try and take over the South to gather and take control of their supplies and crop fields. The South knew the British were coming. No, it was not Paul Revere. We're done with him. The Patriot leader, William Moultrie, used South Carolina's palm trees to build a fort the British could not infiltrate. When the British arrived, the Patriots hadn't finished the fort, but were prepared to fight anyway. The Patriots hung up a blue flag with a crescent moon in the corner for South Carolina. During the battle, the British cannons could not break the palmetto wood, but the Patriots could still fire at the British. At the end of the battle, around 17 Patriots died, 20 were wounded, and 10 went missing somehow. And the British lost around 64 men, around 131 were wounded, and lost an entire ship to guns and palmetto wood. The Declaration of Independence, 1776. The Declaration of Independence was our message to Britain saying, "It's over, take your stuff, get out." Or it was our official declaration that we were independent and claiming our freedom from Britain. But like the toxic girlfriend Britain is, Britain just said, "No, we're staying, they're not leaving." So the draft for the Declaration of Independence was made by Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Roger Sherman, and Robert Livingston. And the people who signed it, it's a lot of people, were John Hancock, Samuel Adams, John Adams, Robert Trepine, and Elbridge Gerry of Massachusetts, Button Gwinnett, Lyman Hall, and George Walton of Georgia, William Hooper, Joseph Hughes, and John Penn of North Carolina, Edward Rutledge, Thomas Hayward Jr., Thomas Lynch Jr., and Arthur Middleton of South Carolina, Samuel Chase, William Paca, Thomas Stone, Charles Carroll of Maryland, George Wythe, Richard Henry Lee, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Harrison, Thomas Nelson Jr., Francis Lightfoot Lee, and Carter Braxton of Virginia, Robert Morris, Benjamin Rush, Benjamin Franklin, John Morton, George Clymer, James Smith, George Taylor, James Wilson, and George Ross of Pennsylvania, Caesar Rodney and George Reed of Delaware, William Floyd, Philip Livingston, Francis Lewis, and Lewis Morris of New York, Richard Stockton, John Witherspoon, Francis Hopkinson, John Hart, and Abraham Clark of New Jersey, Josiah Bartleton, William Whipple, and Matthew Thornton of New Hampshire, Stephen Hopkins and William Ellery of Rhode Island, and Roger Sherman, Samuel Huntington, William Williams, and Oliver Wolcott of Connecticut. And originally, New York abstained from voting, but then they did eventually sign the document. The declaration was voted in July 2nd, and everyone signed it July 4th. The Battle of Trenton, 1776. So the Battle of Trenton took place on Christmas Eve because Washington knew that the Hessians, or soldiers, wouldn't think they were coming. So Washington led his troops over the Delaware River, along with their forces, to where the Hessians had made camp. Because it was Christmas Eve, the Hessians had gotten extremely drunk, and half of them were either passed out or awake, but just not doing well. So when the Patriots got to the Hessians, they were easily able to slaughter them in a vicious bloodbath. And after they had killed the Hessians, they took all of their supplies. The battle was a huge victory for the Patriots and one of Washington's first. The win also gave the soldiers a much-needed morale boost and made them feel hopeful about the situation in the war. In total, 900 of the British soldiers / Hessians died, and 5 Patriots died. This is why you can't get drunk on the job. You'll die, you'll just get killed. So again, this is another huge slap in the face to Britain. The Battle of Saratoga in 1777. At this point in the war, France had started helping the Americans to train their soldiers. The French had also given them supplies like food, weapons, and ammo to help defeat the British. The British leader, John Burgoyne, wanted to craft a new plan to take the Hudson River from the Patriots. Of course, this battle stopped that plan and it failed. So with the help France had given them, they went through supplies and training. So this was an American victory, and the Patriots were led by Horatio Gates. The Battle of Saratoga stopped the British from taking the Hudson River and solidified the allyship between America and France. Obviously, since we're Americans, we cannot get an allyship with France, because we don't want to fight in another war, and in later years, when France is going through their revolution, we don't. And by the end of the battle, around 1,000 British are dead, and around 300 Patriots are dead. Siege of Charleston, 1780. So after the British are horribly losing up north, they decide to come back down to the south, which they failed at before. So the Siege of Charleston doesn't exactly go as the British wanted it. The British leader, Henry Clinton, wanted to get there earlier, but due to events up north, they had to prolong their stay north. So they come back to the south later. The battle is known as one of the Patriots' worst defeats and ends with around 6,000 Americans dead and 260 British dead. Because the British generally won, they got lots of ammo and supplies from the south, but eventually Nathaniel Greene, Francis Marion, and Thomas Hunter used guerrilla warfare to push the British out later on. The Battle of Cowpens in 1781. The Battle of Cowpens is called the Battle of Cowpens because it was fought in South Carolinian pastures. Daniel Morgan, the Patriot leader, told his men to aim for British officers, because generally what ends up happening is without the officers, the soldiers fall apart. So because of Morgan's strategy to shoot the British officers first, Banastre Tarleton, a weird British name, had to flee or retreat because they were just not doing well without their officers. This is obviously an American win with around 800 British dead and about 150 Patriots dead. And if we lost that many people in this war, we would be Britain. And I don't understand how Britain was doing this bad in the war. Kings Mountain, 1781. So the Battle of Kings Mountain is still around the general time of Siege of Charleston. So we know the Americans aren't doing well. And basically, the Southern Patriots turned into mountain people from what battlefields.org is saying. So paraphrasing from one of the quotes from a British soldier, it says that the Patriots coming down of the mountain looked like demons who were underfed and all sinews. So the British are trying to get over the mountain because their leader, Patrick Ferguson, is just told him to go over the Americans, and Ferguson is on a horse, which makes him an extremely easy target. And what ends up happening is Ferguson is shot dead on his horse, and without a real leader, the British can't do crap. So this is a direct quote from the website, because I think it's way funnier than it should be. He is hit multiple times, his body hanging from his horse as his mount flees down the hill. The person being Ferguson. And I think it's really funny to imagine just Ferguson dead on his horse while his horse is just bouncing up and down, going down the mountain. So obviously it's an American win. Ferguson is dead and his men have no clue what to do. And it ends with around 1,000 British soldiers dead and around 900 Americans dead, so neither side really won, but technically the Americans won. Treaty of Paris in 1783. So the Treaty of Paris is after Yorktown, where Britain horribly loses, and Lord Charles Cornwallis surrenders after Yorktown, because Britain can not keep going. They're losing too many men and they're running out of money. So Britain is really mad that they lost, and they just kind of refuse to come to America, and we don't want to go to Britain. So we go to France, specifically Paris. That's why it's the Treaty of Paris. So Britain is just really stubborn and basically refuses to negotiate at all, but we end up getting something with that. So Britain sends delegates to form a treaty in France, and we send negotiators. And the main ones are John Jay, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, and Thomas Jefferson, and then also Henry Adams. So after a lot of negotiation, the Revolutionary War is officially ended on September 3rd in 1783, when the Treaty of Paris is actually signed by everyone. And it's just really a slap in the face to Britain as well, because they fought France before and now they have to go sign a treaty with France and America. It's rough. And another fun fact, King George III went insane after he lost this war. Like, he literally just went insane after he lost the colonies, which is, I think that's real fun.